Hello everyone, and welcome to Storytime with the Alhambra Civic Center Library. My name is Natalie, and today I'm going to read you two stories about frogs. The first one will be The Frog Prince Continued, and if you don't know the story of the Frog Prince, do you remember when the princess kissed the frog and he turned into a prince? Well, what do you think happened after that? So we'll find out. So this is The Frog Prince Continued by John Sheshka, and the paintings were by Steve Johnson. The Frog Prince Continued. The princess kissed the frog, he turned into a prince, and they lived happily ever after. Well, let's just say they lived sort of happily for a long time. Okay, so they weren't so happy. In fact, they were miserable. Stop sticking your tongue out like that, nagged the princess. How come you never want to go down to the pond anymore? Whined the prince. The prince and the princess were so unhappy, and they didn't know what to do. I would prefer that you not hop around on the furniture, said the princess. And it might be nice if you got out of the castle for once in a while to slay a dragon or a giant or whatever. The prince didn't feel like going out and slaying anything. He just felt like running away. But then he reread his book, and it said right there at the end of his story, they lived happily ever after. The end. So he stayed in the castle and drove the princess crazy. Then one day, the princess threw a perfectly awful fit. First, you keep me awake all night with your horrible croaking snore. Now I find a lily pad in your pocket. I can't believe I actually kissed your slimy frog lips. Sometimes I think we would both be better off if you were still a frog. That's when the idea hit him. The prince thought, still a frog. Yes, that's it. And he ran off into the forest looking for a witch who could turn him back into a frog. The prince hadn't gone far when he ran into just the person he was looking for. Miss Witch, excuse me, Miss Witch, I wonder if you could help me? Say, you're not looking for a princess to kiss, are you? Asked the witch. Oh no, I've already been kissed. I'm the Frog Prince. Actually, I was hoping you could turn me back into a frog. Are you sure you're not looking for a beautiful sleeping princess to kiss and wake up? No, I'm a frog prince. That's funny. You don't look like a frog. Well, no matter. If you're a prince, you're a prince, and I'll have to cast a nasty spell on you. I can't have any princess waking up Sleeping Beauty before the 100 years are up. The prince didn't stick around to see which nasty spell the witch had in mind. He ran deeper into the forest until he came to a tiny cottage where he saw another lady who might help him. Miss Witch, excuse me, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me. I'm a prince and... what did you say? Prince? Croaked the witch. No, I mean, yes. I mean, no. I'm not the prince looking for Sleeping Beauty, but yes, I'm the Frog Prince. And I'm looking for a member of your profession who can help me turn back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Frog Prince, you say? That's funny. I thought frogs were green little guys with webbed feet. Well, no matter. If you're a prince, you're a prince. And I can't have any princess rescuing Snow White. Here, eat the rest of this apple. The prince, who knew his fairy tales and knew a poisoned apple when he saw one, didn't even stay to say, no thank you. He turned and ran deeper into the forest. Soon he came to a strange-looking house with a witch outside. Miss Witch, excuse me, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me. I'm the frog. If you're a frog, I'm the king of France, said the witch. No, I'm not a frog. I'm the frog prince. But I need a witch to turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Can you do it? Said the prince with one long breath. The witch eyed the prince and licked her rather plump lips. Why, of course, dear. Come right in. Maybe I can fit you in for lunch. The prince stopped to the slightly gummied steps. Something about this house seemed very familiar. He broke off a corner of the windowsill and tasted it. Gingerbread. I hope you don't mind my asking, Miss Witch, but do you happen to know any children by the name of Hansel and Gretel? Why, yes, Prince Darling, I do. I'm expecting them for dinner. The prince, who, as we said before, knew his fairy tales, ran as fast as he could deeper into the forest. Soon he was completely lost. He saw someone standing next to a tree. The prince walked up to her, hoping she wasn't a witch, for he'd quite had his fill of witches. Madam, I'm the Frog Prince. Could you help me? Gosh, do you need it, said the fairy godmother. You are the worst looking frog I've ever seen. I'm not a frog, I'm the Frog Prince, said the prince, getting a little annoyed. And I need someone to turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Well, I'm on my way to see a girl in the village about going to a ball, but I suppose I could give it a try. I've never done frogs before, you know. And with that, the fairy godmother waved her magic wand and turned the prince into a beautiful carriage. The prince couldn't believe his rotten luck. The sun went down, the forest got spookier, and the prince became more and more frightened. Oh, what an idiot I've been. I could be sitting at home with the princess, living happily ever after. But instead, I'm stuck here in the middle of this stupid forest, turned into a stupid carriage. Now I'll probably just rot and fall apart and live unhappily ever after. The prince thought these terrible, frightening kind of thoughts, and a few worse, too awful to tell, until far away in the village, the clock struck midnight. The carriage instantly turned back into his former prince self and ran by the light of the moon until he was safe inside his own castle. Where have you been? I've been worrying sick. You're 7 hours late, your dinner is cold, your clothes are a mess. The prince looked at the princess, who had believed him when no one else in the world had, the princess who had actually kissed his slimy frog lips, the princess who loved him. The prince kissed the princess, they both turned into frogs, and they hopped off happily ever after. The end. So our second book is actually about real frogs, so we're going to learn about the different frogs, and this is called Fabulous Frogs by Martin Jenkins and illustrated by Tim Hopgood. Fabulous frogs. This frog is huge for a frog. It is a Goliath frog and it lives in the Western Africa. It's the biggest frog in the world and sometimes it eats other frogs. These frogs are tiny. This is the smallest kind of frog in the world, or at least the smallest that anyone knows about. It lives in Papua New Guinea. And this one has a very strange nose. It's called Darwin's frog and it lives in South America. No one really knows why it has a pointy nose. Oops, this frog can jump really far and really quick. It's a striped rocket frog from Australia. It can jump 16 feet in one go. Very handy for escaping from enemies in a hurry. Ribbit, grub, ribbit, ribbit. And these ones make an awful lot of noise. Frogs call to let each other know they are there. These are all male frogs. Female frogs are generally much quieter. The big one in the middle is a bullfrog. This one is called a flying frog, although it can't really fly. It lives in trees and forests in Southeast Asia. It spreads out the skin between its toes to help it float in the air when it jumps from tree to tree. And this one is called a hairy frog, although it doesn't have any real hair. The hairy frog lives in Western Africa. The things that look like hairs are little stripes of skin. They probably help the frog breathe when it's underwater. I think these frogs are very beautiful. I couldn't tell you which one is the most, but I can tell you that each one could kill a horse, though only if the horse was silly enough to eat it. A horse wouldn't eat a frog on purpose, but plenty of other animals might. South American poison arrow frogs have deadly poison in their skin to help protect them. Their bright colors are an easy way of saying, keep away. These frogs make a nest of foam for their eggs. They're African gray tree frogs. Their nests hang in branches over ponds or streams. When the eggs in the nest hatch, the tadpoles wriggle out and drop into the water below. And the one with the very strange nose looks like after its babies in its throat. The male Darwin's frog snaps up the eggs just before they hatch and keeps the tadpoles in a special pouch in his throat. You'd think he would swallow them all the way down by accident, but he never seems to. This frog never leaves the water. It's an African clawed frog. It spends its whole life living in a stream or pond. Not many frogs do that. And this frog can live buried in the ground for years and years, waiting for the rain. It's an Australian water-holding frog, and it lives in the desert. It makes a little room for itself where it stays cool and down. When it rains and the ground gets wet, the frog digs itself out. All these frogs are wonderful, but my favorite frog of all is the medium-sized greeny brown one that sits on a lily pad in my backyard pond. And that is the end. I hope you enjoyed the story of the Frog Prince and learning a little bit about the frogs in our world. And thank you for joining me for story time, and I hope to see you again soon.